I did the unboxing of my brand new Leica MP 2 weeks ago, and now I have the results of my very first roll of film. I just got the scans back from the film lab, so I'll go over the photos, all the mistakes I made, and what I could work on for next time. I have not shot any film since the days of the disposable cameras, so this is coming from the perspective of a complete beginner. So why go back to film now? I think it's the same reason as going back to reading physical books, going back to vinyl records, is to get back to that analog experience, getting more hands-on with photography. And the cliche goes with film photography that it's about the process, not the final results. And I agree with that. It's a totally different and fun process, shooting film versus digital. I'll talk about the photos in a minute, but first, this camera looks and feels amazing. It's not just beautiful to look at, it's extremely satisfying to work with. The high gloss black lacquer paint looks wonderful, and it's a nice change up from the usual matte black finishes of most Leica. Everything is stripped down and kept minimal, totally mechanical except for the internal light meter. It does require a small battery for the internal light meter, but you could take out the battery and use it without a meter and use it as a completely mechanical camera. No Leica red dot on the front, but there is a Leica script on the top plate, which I wish they would have omitted that also. The build construction is very solid. It feels very compact, heavy, and it feels indestructible. The shutter dial and the rewind knob are solid brass. The shutter dial was stiff out of the box, but now it is loosening up and I can start to use it with one finger. Everything is completely metal construction on the outside, except for that ISO dial, which is plastic, and I don't understand why that's not metal. I have the camera on a plain black leather Leica strap, which seems to work best for me, and I have it in this artisan and artist case, which is very high quality, black leather. It feels very soft to touch, and it feels almost like a cushion around the camera. So it gives pretty good coverage, although the fit on the back is not perfect. The ISO ring is not completely centered. I did not bring along my new 28mm Summilux lens for my first roll of film because I was packing light for the trip and I didn't think the 28mm would be versatile enough. It's one of my largest and heaviest lenses, so I wanted to pack something a little bit lighter. And another issue is that with the price of this lens and being new to me, I'm finding myself being extra careful when taking out this lens to avoid damaging it. The hood is very large and bulky, but I feel like I need to have a hood on here for protection. But I did order a third-party hood, but I could not find anything much smaller than that hood. And replacing a Leica hood costs about $335, so I'll probably just use the third-party hood and stash away the Leica hood. The lens I brought instead was the 35mm Summilux, and I've had good results with this on the M11, but looking at the photos, I probably didn't need all that resolving power to shoot this on film. So I could have brought something even more lightweight and portable. The film I brought with me is the Fujifilm 400. I brought along 2 rolls of film, but I ended up only using one of the rolls. I was planning on shooting mostly outdoors, and the 400 speed seemed to be versatile, but I think I underestimated how bright the sunlight was, so I would have been better off bringing a 200 or 100. The description of this film is consistent and accurate colors, rich saturation, optimized skin tones, fine grain, and wide exposure latitude. I don't totally agree with this description because I don't think the colors are completely accurate, and I think there is a lot of grain with this photo film. Let's get into the photos, and I'll break down my analysis into composition, exposure, coloring, and sharpness. Out of the 36 exposures on this roll, I only got a couple photos that I liked, and I was expecting that. And I got a couple that were just bad and mistakes, but most of the compositions were just not interesting enough. And that's my mistake and something I need to work on. But it was difficult to find interesting subjects walking around the area, and I couldn't just look at the digital screen for feedback on my composition and correct the composition next time. I started to realize this about halfway through the roll, and the second half I tried to work a little bit better on finding some interesting subject or composition. And regarding the coloring, I get a totally different effect from using this same 35 millimeter Summilux lens on film compared to my M11. On this Fujifilm film stock, the colors are definitely trending more on the warmer side, more on the reddish tones. On some of the photos, there's almost a reddish overcast to the whole photo, and that contributes to the more vintage look of the photo. And as far as the exposure, most of these came out looking pretty correct. I'm not sure how much the film processor affected this or corrected the exposure, but I exposed it using the internal light meter and used that as a guide, and I didn't try to overexpose or underexpose. Some of them came out very clear, and some of them came out with a low contrast haze to it, and I'm not sure what I did wrong with the exposure there. As far as sharpness, again, very different than a digital camera. I shot most of these at f8 or f11, so theoretically it should be in focus, but the image comes out much more softer than a digital photo. You can see that swirling effect in the background, especially with some of the trees. And I wish I would have captured some more artificial lights, but there is a nice glow around the incandescent lights. The film lab that I used for this role was Reformed Film Lab, and that was just the first thing that popped up on a search for online film developers. They do offer prints, but I didn't order any of those. I just ordered the scans. But it took almost 2 weeks to get the results. 1 week to mail the film to them, and 1 week for them to process it and send me an email where I can download all the photos. But I think they did a very decent job with the material that I gave them and probably did some corrections as far as exposure. Final conclusions, shooting my first roll of film on the MP was a totally different experience, much more satisfying, I think, than shooting on a digital camera. The ISO was always set at 400, so I just needed to adjust the aperture and the shutter speed. I didn't have any help from the digital screen on the back of the camera to check and correct my composition, and I didn't even know what kind of results I would be getting until 2 weeks later, and that's part of the fun of it. But I still think that this film does not need the high resolving power of a modern Summilux lens, so bringing my 35 Summilux maybe was overkill. So my second roll of film was shot using my 35 millimeter Summilux steel rim reissue, and that's currently being processed right now. And after that, on my third roll, I'll be trying out the 28 millimeter Sumaran reissue. I like that silver lens on the black body look, and these lenses are very small and compact and lightweight, so this is a very portable setup. And I think the character of these lenses will add more to whatever film stock I'm shooting. So I'm looking forward to the results from the steel rim reissue and how different they'll come out compared to the modern 35 Summilux.